Hello and welcome to the highlights of the third set of the semifinals of the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour Finals. Well, we already have the first finalist in place, Hikaru Nakamura making short work of Daniil Dubov winning 3-0 in the best of 5 set semifinal. Well, the other one was as expected again with Magnus Carlsen repeating the dose what he had administered to Ding Liren in the second set. Once again, he won 2.5 in a grossly one-sided contest. So Magnus Carlsen will have to come back again for the fourth set but to probably wrap up the match. Going by his form, he looks like the firm favorite as he always was, but that reverse in the first set had made people think that probably this could go the distance. But the way Magnus Carlsen has bounced back with 2 victories back to back, and that too just needing 3 games each to finish off the sets, it shows that he means business. So before we talk about the Ding Liren Magnus Carlsen match, let's take a closer look at what really happened between Nakamura and Dubov. Well, the first 2 games ended as draws, and in the third Nakamura won, and the fourth again ended in a draw. So it was 2.5, 1.5 in favor of Nakamura. Now the first 2 games, if we look at it a little closely, well, the first one was a pretty dry affair, pretty boring, not very exciting throughout the game, as Nakamura himself said that there were not any great ideas in that game. And probably at one stage, Dubov was slightly in a position where he could have pressed a little harder, but then Nakamura never looked in any kind of trouble. So the first game ended in a draw. The second one, again, Nakamura had a very slight edge, but not good enough for him to convert it into a win. So 2 equal kind of contests, not very exciting. And that took us to the third game. And now the third game was somewhere that also could have ended in a draw. But before we reach that point, this is where I think the way Dubov plays, remember Dubov was white in this game. And there's a bit of history here because Dubov with white tries to do a little more than he normally would do with black. Well, generally this is true with most of the players, but with Daniil, of course, because he was trailing in the match at that point, so he was expected to do something. After all, it was his last white game in the rapid section, and he just had to take the lead. So for that, he had to do something. And in the same spirit, I should say, Nakamura also was ready, and he said, okay, let us just have a contest where white was going to try harder and Nakamura, being black, wanted to just hold on to the position. And as it turned out, it could have been a draw, as Nakamura later on went on to say, but then Dubov just got a little too creative towards the end. It was an equal position, could have ended in a draw, but then there was a stage where both players had a rook each and a knight each, and that is the point where in an equal position Daniil Dubov faltered, and Nakamura just saw that winning continuation and finished it. So that was a kind of a reverse for Daniil. He was down 1-2 at that stage. Now he just had to win with black in the fourth. But if you remember the first set, it was a similar situation. Daniil Dubov was down 1-2. He was to play with black pieces in the fourth, and he won that game. But yesterday, Hikaru remembered that and didn't give him much of a chance. In fact, he was the one with white who got into a position where he was actually looking at executing a winning combination there, a kind of a checkmating combination. But once he wasn't convinced that this was a certain win, what he did was he just went to force a repetition of moves. There was a 3-fold repetition with Hikaru just trying to harass Dubov's queen with his rook, and finally that ended in a draw. And this is exactly what Nakamura wanted. He wanted that half a point to finish the match, and that cleared the way for Nakamura reaching the final. So it was a fantastic game, a very clinical game from him. He didn't press too hard for a win, needing that. He just sensed that, of course, he just needed a draw to finish off things, and he did exactly that. Now, after the match, Nakamura was asked what really happened in this particular match, which didn't happen earlier on the tour. So what he said was that since they had clashed a few times on the tour before, just for those who don't are really keeping track of the background, Nakamura had lost the final of the Lindores Abbey tournament to Dubov, and Dubov in turn had lost to Nakamura in the last league match of the Chessable Masters, and he got knocked out. So they had traded blows, and in that background, obviously Nakamura was not happy with this kind of a result, because he thought that even in the Lindores match he should have won, but of course he made those mistakes. And then when he recalled what he did right in this tournament, Nakamura was very, very candid. He said, look, I realized that I had lost to Dubov in that particular match by trying too hard when he got into a position of advantage. And once that advantage was slipping away, he was trying even harder. And that in turn saw that Nakamura, from a winning position to a drawn position, he was trying too hard, and then he lost from a drawn position. So that's what he realized. He at least recalled two such instances where games should have ended as draws, but Nakamura just tried too hard and eventually lost. So he told himself, look, I'm not going to do this again. I'm just going to play solid. And second point that he made was that he also discovered that Dubov loved positions that were dynamic, where a lot of creativity was actually there to be shown. And Nakamura just ensured that, look, I'm not going to allow Daniil to show his creativity. I'm just going to make the position, in his own words, dry and boring as possible. And that is what he tried to do. And that made Daniil grow a little frustrated, and in his exasperation, he committed those mistakes. So this is how Nakamura saw things, and he was obviously very happy to just win it in 3. That also allows him 1 extra day of rest. Well, in the other semifinals, Magnus Carlsen once again showed that he's still not done with Ding Liren. Just because he lost the first set, he's just come back with a vengeance and finished off the next 2 sets in just 3 games with 1 rapid game to spare. Now, imagine the first set went up to 7 games, and the second and the third together have just lasted 6 games. So that shows how focused Magnus Carlsen is and how helpless Ding Liren is at this point in time. So what really happened in the match today, set 3, was that the first game we saw both players opening with a very double-edged Sicilian game, where now this is the kind of defense which is, obviously all defenses are meant for black pieces, and Sicilian offers black some attacking chances, but as Magnus were to say later, he said Ding didn't quite play the opening very accurately there, and still that game did end in a draw, but these things do happen because Carlsen was better, as he said, and of course it was quite visible, but it wasn't enough for him to convert that into a win. But I think draw was a very, very fair result in game 1. Game 2, well, this is where Carlsen had his options. I mean, he had a few options where he just went with it, and Ding Liren playing with black somehow didn't really look very comfortable, and he made that mistake in the middle game, and then it was Magnus Carlsen, who just gained that control. Things were looking fine. It was quite an equal game. And suddenly, from nowhere, Magnus Carlsen realized that, okay, I have this half a chance. Let me just give it a shot. And he went on to convert that. Now, this we have seen so often in the past, that in a materially equal position, in a very optically equal position, it is Magnus who makes things happen. And that is exactly what he did. And then, as he said later, that he just saw that, okay, I'm getting a chance. Let me just try and see what happens. And he got all the moves in the right order, and all of them were pretty accurate. Now, that is the best part of Magnus Carlsen. I think that is what Nakamura was to say later, that the only difference between Magnus and the rest of the top players is that Magnus somehow makes these moves consistently a little better than most of the other players. And that is where he does these small things definitely better. So that is exactly what he showed against Ding in the second game, and to take the lead. And then thereafter, Game 3. Well, Game 3 was a pretty close affair, I must say, because at one stage, Magnus was superior. He was trying to press hard, then he faltered. And that was, I think, his 19th move as he was playing black. And that is where Ding Liren faltered, and he faltered big time because immediately on the 20th move, he made a pawn push on the queen side, thereby allowing Carlsen to not only make up for that disadvantage which he had created after move 19, and he was suddenly in with a chance where there is a particular combination where Carlsen can take the pawn in front of the castle king of Ding, and then thereafter, of course, it was a complete one-way traffic. This was around the 19th move, and the game eventually ended in 29 moves. So those last 10 moves was all Magnus Carlsen, although he faltered on the 19th but won on the 29th. So Ding Liren just couldn't do anything about it. He did have a chance, missed it, and then he was punished so severely by Magnus. So twice in 2 days, it was Magnus winning 2.5-half. And that also underlines his resolve, that he's not even giving away even half a chance to Ding Liren. So a lot can happen still, because everybody believes that Ding has the game to beat Magnus. But in this form, well, it looks increasingly unlikely. Though Ding Liren won the first set, but thereafter it has been Magnus Carlsen all the way. So let's hope that we do have a closer contest tomorrow. But the way things are happening, it looks highly unlikely. Ding Liren just faces another must-win situation, whether he's able to stop the juggernaut of Magnus. Again, as I said, looks unlikely, but not improbable, not impossible. So let's hope for the best. There will be more entertainment, and I'll be back with more tomorrow. Thank you for watching.